Be me, 5th grade teacher at Progressive Elementary School, have master's degree in education with focus on social justice pedagogy, spent years crafting the perfect curriculum to enlighten these children, finally have the opportunity to shape young minds the right way. Been teaching for 8 years now, and this year is going to be my masterpiece. Developed entire unit on gender identity, systemic oppression, and decolonizing mathematics. So proud of myself for being brave enough to teach what really matters. First day of school, and I can already tell which kids come from problematic households. One boy wearing a sports team shirt, obviously being raised in toxic masculinity environment. One girl with long hair and pink backpack, clearly having gender stereotypes forced on her. We're going to save these children, whether their parents like it or not. Start the year off strong with my pronouns introduction. Make every student share their pronouns in circle time. Several kids look confused, exactly as I expected from this backwards community. One boy says he doesn't understand what I mean. Spend 40 minutes explaining gender spectrum instead of doing the planned math lesson. Math can wait. This is more important. Send home letter to parents about my inclusive classroom policies. Explain that students will be learning about gender identity, racial justice, and challenging oppressive systems. Phrase it carefully using all the right educational buzzwords. Parents can't complain if I use proper academic language. First week goes smoothly. Kids are absorbing everything I teach them. Have them write in journals about times they've witnessed injustice. Tell them to really think about power structures in their homes. Who makes the rules? Who has the power? What stereotypes are being enforced? Reading their entries, and most are writing about not getting dessert or bedtime being too early. Clearly need to guide them more explicitly toward recognizing real oppression. Start. Second week, with lesson on historical figures. Not the whitewashed versions from traditional curriculum. The real truth about how this country was built on stolen land and slave labor. Have students write letters of apology to indigenous peoples. I make them reflect on their own privilege, even the kids who are clearly from working class families. Privilege isn't just about money, I explain. It's about whiteness. It's about being cisgender. It's about heteronormativity. One student raises hand and says her mom said she shouldn't be made to feel bad for being white. Here we go. Exactly what I expected. Explain very carefully that we're not saying anyone should feel bad. We're just acknowledging facts and taking responsibility. Student still looks upset, but I know I'm planting important seeds. Couple days later, get email from parent requesting meeting. Some dad who clearly has too much time on his hands, probably one of those men's rights types, agree to meeting because I'm confident in my pedagogy. Meeting day comes and he shows up in business casual. Already can tell he thinks he's so important. Starts asking questions about curriculum. What standards am I following? What materials am I using? Show him my curriculum maps and explain the importance of culturally responsive teaching. He's not getting it. Keeps asking about age appropriateness. Such a dog whistle phrase. Tell him that children are never too young to learn about justice. If they're old enough to experience oppression, they're old enough to learn about it. He asks, what oppression 5th graders are experiencing. Can't believe I have to explain this to a grown man. Tell him about microaggressions, about implicit bias, about systems of power. He's clearly not listening, just waiting to argue. Asks why his daughter came home crying about being an oppressor. I explain she's not an oppressor, but she benefits from oppressive systems. It's an important distinction that apparently went over her head. Make note, to revisit that lesson with more clarity. He says he doesn't want his daughter being taught to feel guilty for her identity, and literally roll my eyes. This is exactly the problem with parents like this. Explain that discomfort is part of learning. If we're not uncomfortable, we're not growing. Meeting ends with him saying he'll be monitoring what I teach. Good luck with that, buddy. I have academic freedom. Next week, start unit on family structures. Use books featuring same-sex parents, polyamorous families, chosen families. Explain that the nuclear family is a social construct created to support capitalism. Students seem interested, asking lots of questions. One boy says his dad said, marriage is between a man and a woman. Perfect, teachable moment. Explain how that's a heteronormative belief system rooted in religious oppression. Have class discuss why some people hold on to outdated beliefs. Boy looks embarrassed. Mission accomplished. Maybe he'll go home and educate his father during math time. Implement my decolonized mathematics unit. Traditional math is too focused on getting right answers. That's a tool of white supremacy culture. Instead, focus on math as exploration and social justice. Have students calculate wealth gaps. Show them statistics about income inequality. One student asks why we're not doing times tables, to explain that memorization is an oppressive practice. We're going to understand math conceptually instead. Student says her mom is helping her memorize multiplication at home. Tell her that's fine, but it's not real understanding. Probably should send another letter home about my math philosophy. Month into school year, and I'm feeling great about my impact. Students are using terms like privilege and oppression correctly. They're questioning their parents' beliefs. Exactly what education should do. Get called into principal's office. Apparently several parents have complained. Principal is supportive of social justice education, but worried about parent backlash. Tells me to maybe tone it down a bit. Can't believe what I'm hearing. We're supposed to be a progressive school. Ask if she's really going to let conservative parents dictate curriculum. She says it's not about conservative or progressive. It's about community relations. I argue that community relations shouldn't matter more than student learning. She suggests I focus more on state standards. I feel completely betrayed. Thought admin would have my back. Leave her office furious. I'm not changing anything. This is too important. Next day, that same dad from earlier emails requesting copies of all my teaching materials cites some freedom of information policy. Have to comply, but I know my rights. Academic freedom protects my pedagogical choices. Spend hours compiling materials to send him. Include all my social justice frameworks and sources. If he actually reads them, maybe he'll learn something. Week later, get formal complaint filed with school board. This dad and several other parents are challenging my curriculum. Claim I'm indoctrinating students. Such a typical right-wing talking point. They specifically cite my gender identity lessons and decolonized math. Also upset about me teaching critical analysis of historical figures. Apparently teaching the truth about founding fathers is controversial. School board schedules hearing. Principal tells me to prepare to defend my curriculum choices. Spend days preparing presentation. Gather all my sources, all my educational theory, all my credentials. This is literally what I went to graduate school for. I know more about education than these parents. They just don't like their kids learning to think critically. Hearing day arrives and I'm ready. Walk into board meeting and there are way more people than I expected. Apparently this has become some kind of community issue. Local news is even there. Perfect. Let them see me stand up for educational justice. That dad is there with a lawyer. A literal lawyer for a curriculum complaint. Such male energy, having to dominate and control everything. Board asks me to present my teaching philosophy. Give passionate speech about transformative education. Explain how traditional education perpetuates systems of oppression. My job is to liberate students from those systems. Show examples of my lessons and student work. Explain pedagogical framework behind each choice. Feel like I'm nailing this. Then the parents get to speak. Dad goes first with his lawyer. They have PowerPoint presentation prepared, showing excerpts from my lessons with highlighted sections, making me sound like some kind of extremist, completely taking everything out of context. Shows example of student journal entry, where kid wrote about feeling bad for being white. Claims I'm causing psychological harm. I try to interject that discomfort isn't harm. Board tells me I'll have my chance to respond. Lawyer starts citing education codes and state standards. Argues I'm not following required curriculum. Shows comparison between state standards and what I actually taught. Obviously there's going to be differences. I'm teaching better content. State standards are outdated and problematic anyway. More parents speak up. One mom crying about her daughter having nightmares about being an oppressor. So dramatic. Clearly coached by that dad. Another parent complaining their son is failing math because he can't do basic calculations. Maybe if they supported conceptual learning at home, this wouldn't be an issue. Parent after parent acting like I'm destroying their children. When it's my turn to respond, I'm shaking with anger. Explain very clearly that I'm doing exactly what teachers should do. Challenging assumptions. Encouraging critical thinking. Teaching truth. If their children are uncomfortable, it's because they're learning. If they're struggling with traditional math tests, it's because the tests are the problem. I refuse to perpetuate oppressive educational practices just to make parents comfortable. Board members asking questions. One asks how gender identity relates to 5th grade curriculum. Explain it's part of social, emotional learning and inclusive education. Another asks about my math instruction. Defend my decolonization approach. They clearly don't understand progressive pedagogy. One board member who I thought was an ally asks if I consulted with parents before implementing these lessons. Feel betrayed again. Explain that I don't need parent permission to teach facts. Would we ask parents permission to teach about photosynthesis? This is the same thing, just social science instead of natural science. Board says they'll deliberate and make decision. Leave feeling angry and self-righteous. Post about the experience on my social media. All my teacher friends comment with support. We're all fighting the same battles against regressive parents. Get hundreds of likes and shares. At least some people understand what I'm doing. Weak. Later get called into superintendent's office. The board has made decision. I'm being put on administrative leave pending investigation. What investigation? I didn't do anything wrong. Superintendent explains that parents are now filing lawsuit against district, claiming emotional distress, educational malpractice, violation of parental rights. My teaching is creating liability for district. Start arguing that this is exactly why we need tenure protection. I'm being punished for progressive teaching. Superintendent says it's not about progressive or conservative. It's about following approved curriculum and respecting community values. I ask what happened to academic freedom. He says, academic freedom doesn't mean teaching whatever I want, however I want. Especially not at elementary level. I can't believe this is happening. I'm the victim here, being targeted for doing the right thing. During leave, I consult with teachers' union. They're supportive, but say, my case is complicated. I did. Deviate significantly from approved curriculum. Explain that approved curriculum is problematic. Union rep says, that doesn't matter legally. I should have gone through proper channels to change curriculum. Apparently, I was supposed to get curriculum changes approved by committee. Didn't know that was a real requirement. Thought it was just a formality. Union will defend me, but warns I might not win. Lawsuit against district is moving forward. I'm named individually, along with district. Parents are suing for damages, demanding I be fired. I have to get my own lawyer. Consultation with lawyer is depressing. He asks if I documented parent notifications about curriculum. Sort of. I sent that letter at beginning of year. He says it wasn't specific enough about content. Asks if I followed state standards. Explain my philosophy about state standards being tools of oppression. He looks at me like I'm crazy. Tells me that's not going to be a valid legal defense. I need to show I was following some kind of approved educational framework. Show him all my graduate school sources. Critical pedagogy, social justice education, culturally responsive teaching. He says that's good, but did my district adopt these frameworks? I don't know. Assumed progressive district would be on board. Lawyer explains, I needed explicit approval for significant curriculum changes, especially for controversial topics. I argue that justice isn't controversial. He says legally it doesn't matter if I think I'm right. I had professional obligations I didn't follow, feeling completely unsupported by everyone. Months go by and I'm still on administrative leave. Still getting paid at least. Spending time on social media building support. Write articles about my experience for progressive education blogs. Frame myself as victim of conservative backlash. Get some attention from activist groups. They want to make me face of movement for educational freedom. Finally, something good from this situation. Discovery. Phase of lawsuit is nightmare. Have to turn over all my lesson plans, all my communications. They're going through everything looking for evidence. My lawyer warns me some of my emails to colleagues are problematic. One where I called parents obstacles to student liberation. Another where I said I was deprogramming kids from their parents' bigotry. I was venting to colleagues, didn't mean it literally. Lawyer says it shows pattern of dismissing parental rights. Depositions are worse. Parents' lawyer asking detailed questions about every lesson, trying to make me admit I was indoctrinating students. I refuse to use that word. I was educating, not indoctrinating. He shows me example of worksheet where I had students identify their privilege. Asks if I think 10-year-olds can meaningfully analyze complex sociological concepts. Of course they can. Children are smarter than adults give them credit for. He asks if any students expressed discomfort with lessons. Some did, but that's part of learning process. Asks if I modified my approach when students expressed distress. No, because I knew the lessons were important. He's making me sound like monster. I was helping these kids. Shows me math test scores from my class. Significantly below district average. I explain that standardized tests are biased. He asks if parents were informed their children were below grade level in math. Wasn't my job to make them feel bad about test scores. Deposition goes on for hours. Every answer I give, he twists into something sinister. School board investigation concludes while lawsuit is ongoing. Find out through my union rep. Board found that I violated district policies on curriculum implementation, failed to follow state standards, didn't properly communicate with parents about controversial content, didn't seek required approvals for significant curriculum modifications. Recommendation is termination. Union negotiates it down to resignation in lieu of termination. We can keep teaching. License, but have to leave district. Refuse to resign. If they want me gone, they have to fire me. I'm not admitting I did anything wrong. Board votes to terminate my employment. 4-1 vote. Only the progressive board member votes to keep me. In termination letter, they claim it's about policy violations, not content. Such cowardice. They know it's really about conservative parents getting their way. Lawsuit still moving forward even though I'm fired. Parents want damages for tutoring costs, therapy costs, emotional distress. My lawyer says district will probably settle, but since I'm individual defendant too, I'm still liable. Suggests I should settle too. Absolutely not. I didn't do anything wrong. These parents are snowflakes who can't handle their kids learning truth. A lawyer warns me that going to trial is risky. I could lose and owe significant damages. Don't care. It's the principle. Can't let them win. Trial date gets set. Spend months preparing. My lawyer lines up expert witnesses on progressive education, professors who support social justice pedagogy, other teachers who use similar methods. Going to prove that I was using legitimate educational practices. Parents have their own experts, child psychologists, education policy specialists, curriculum experts. Going to argue I caused harm and violated standards of practice. Trial starts, and it's a media circus. Conservative outlets calling me indoctrinator, progressive outlets calling me hero. Truth is, I'm just teacher who cares about justice. First few days are parent testimonies. One after another talking about how their kids changed and became anxious, started having identity crises, fell behind in basic skills, all exaggerated and dramatic. Kids are resilient, they would have been fine. One mom testifies her daughter stopped wanting to wear dresses, claims I made her feel ashamed of femininity. I was just expanding her understanding of gender expression. Dad testifies his son came home saying, all white. People are bad. I never said that. I said white people benefit from systemic racism. If kid misunderstood, that's not my fault. Another parent testifies about math struggles. Their kid couldn't do multiplication and got placed in remedial math in 6th grade. Claims it's because I didn't teach fundamentals. I taught conceptual understanding, which is more important. Student testimonies are played on video since they're minors. Some kids saying they felt confused and upset by my lessons. One girl crying about feeling like bad person, completely missing the point of the lessons. My lawyer objects that these are coached testimonies. Judge allows them anyway. Expert witnesses for parents are convincing, unfortunately. Psychologist testifies about age appropriateness of identity development. Says 5th graders aren't developmentally ready for complex privilege analysis. Claims my approach could cause identity confusion and anxiety. Education expert testifies I violated basic curriculum. Principles. Failed to scaffold learning. Didn't differentiate instruction. Ignored developmental stages. Shows comparison between my curriculum and state standards. Makes it look like I taught almost none of required content. All out of context, though. I taught what mattered instead of arbitrary standards. Finally, my turn to testify. Chance to explain my philosophy and intentions, talk about my education, my training, my commitment to justice, explain each lesson and its purpose, make clear I was trying to help these students, prepare them for a diverse world, teach them to think critically, challenge oppressive systems. Cross-examination is brutal. Parents' lawyer has printed out all my social media posts about the case. Posts where I called parents bigots and oppressors, where I said they were raising kids to be racist and sexist. Asks if I really think parents who disagree with me are bigots. Try to explain nuance between individual prejudice and systemic issues. He's not interested. In nuance, asks yes or no questions I can't answer simply. Brings up my emails about deprogramming students. Asks if I saw myself as saving children from their parents. Try to explain that's not what I meant. He reads my own words back to me. Sounds bad out of context. Asks about specific students who showed distress. Did I contact parents when student was upset? No, because I knew parents were part of the problem. Did I modify lessons when students struggled? No, because struggle is part of learning. Did I consider that maybe my approach wasn't working? It was working. Students were learning to think critically. Asks about math test scores again. Were parents informed their kids were behind? State tests are biased measures. That's not what he asked. Yes or no, were parents informed? Probably not directly by me. Did I think parents had right to know their kids were struggling with basic math? Kids weren't struggling, tests were inappropriate. He shows example of student work. Fifth grader who couldn't do basic multiplication asks if I think that's acceptable outcome. We focused on different skills. What skills? He asks. Analyzing wealth inequality, understanding systemic oppression. He asks if that's more important than multiplication for 10-year-old. Yes, actually, it is. Courtroom murmurs. My lawyer objects, but damage is done. Rest of trial is blur of experts and arguments. My experts testify about value of critical pedagogy. Sound good in theory. But when parents' lawyer cross-examines them, even they admit elementary implementation is tricky. One admits she wouldn't use all my methods with fifth graders. Another says parent communication is essential. Component I skipped. Closing arguments finally come. Parents' lawyer paints me as zealot who put ideology above students. Argues I caused measurable harm through educational malpractice. My lawyer argues I was engaged in protected academic expression, that I used legitimate if progressive teaching methods, that any discomfort was part of valuable learning. Jury deliberates for 2 days. Come back with verdict. Find in favor of parents on educational malpractice claim. Find district and me both liable. Award damages for tutoring, therapy, and emotional distress. My portion is $70,000. Don't have that kind of money. Lawyer says, I can appeal but unlikely to win. Might be able to negotiate payment plan. Devastated but still convinced I'm right. These parents weaponize the legal system, use their privilege to punish me for speaking truth. After trial, do interview with Progressive Podcast. Tell my side of story. Talk about how this case represents larger attack on teachers. Conservative parents trying to control education. Prevent kids from learning about racism, gender, systemic oppression. Get some support from activist community. Crowdfunding campaign raises some money for my legal fees. Not enough, but something. Try to get teaching job in another district. My termination and lawsuit make me unhireable. Even progressive districts won't touch me. End up working retail while fighting to keep teaching license. State Board of Education reviews my case. Decide to suspend my license for 2 years. After that, can reapply if I complete additional training. Training on professional boundaries and curriculum standards. Such a joke. They're trying to retrain me to be compliant. Months after trial, that dad who started everything writes op-ed, talks about how he doesn't hate teachers or oppose progressive values. Just wanted age-appropriate education for his daughter. Wanted basic skills alongside critical thinking. Wanted to be informed and involved in her education. Makes himself sound so reasonable. Conveniently leaves out his obvious bigotry. The way he questioned my gender identity lessons. His resistance to teaching about racism. Writes that he hopes other parents will be more vigilant about curriculum. That they'll advocate for their kids without being dismissed as bigots. Ends with statement about respecting teachers but holding them accountable. Reading it makes my blood boil. He doesn't respect teachers. He respects his own authority over education. Can't stand that I tried to teach his daughter to question his worldview. That's what this was really about. Controlling information to maintain his power. Right response piece for Progressive Education blog. Explain how parents like him are a threat to educational equity. How their reasonable concerns are really about maintaining oppression. How teacher autonomy is essential to justice. How I do everything the same way again. Piece gets some shares, but mostly from people already on my side. Mainstream education community seems to have moved on. See articles about lessons learned from my case. Teachers sharing how they navigate controversial topics. Acting like I'm cautionary tale. Talking about importance of parent communication and following standards. Completely missing the point. The point isn't to be more careful about teaching justice. The point is to be braver. Year after trial, still working retail, still in debt from legal fees, still convinced I was right. Sometimes former students reach out on social media. Some say they appreciated my teaching, say I opened their eyes to important issues. Those messages keep me going, validate that I made difference. Other students, though, one writes that my class made her hate school, that she felt constantly judged for her identity, that it took therapy to feel okay about being white. I write back explaining she misunderstood the lessons. She blocks me. Whatever. Some people refuse to be educated. Apply to have teaching license reinstated after 2 years. Have to do interview with state board. They ask if I understand why my teaching was problematic. Explain that I understand parents and administration didn't support my methods. They ask if I would do anything differently. Say I would communicate more with parents. Follow administrative procedures better. They ask if I would change actual lesson content. Long pause. No, I should say yes. Can't bring myself to lie. Say, I believe the content was important and age appropriate. Would maybe scaffold it differently. Board members exchange looks. Deny my license reinstatement. Tell me to reapply in another year after I demonstrate understanding of professional standards. Walk out feeling defeated but still righteous. The system is broken. Punishes teachers for caring too much, for trying to make real change. Couple years after everything happened, see news article that dad is running for school board, campaigning on platform of curriculum transparency and parental rights. Of course he is. Using his victory over me as launching pad, article interviews him and other parents from the lawsuit. They talk about positive changes in district since my firing, new curriculum review process, parent advisory committees, focus on basic skills. They're proud of dragging education backwards. Article briefly mentions me, describes me as controversial former teacher, says I declined to comment. No one asked me to comment. Write my own post about it on social media. Point out how this proves it was always about control. Conservative parents installing themselves as education gatekeepers, preventing future teachers from doing what I tried to do. Post gets fewer likes than my old posts used to. People seem tired of my story. Even allies suggest maybe it's time to move on. But moving on means letting them win. Means admitting I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. Those kids needed to learn about justice. They needed someone willing to tell them truth. If they struggled with it, that's society's fault for not preparing them. If parents were upset, that's their privilege talking. If I lost my career, that's the cost of standing up for what's right. Still believe that. Have to believe that. Because if I'm wrong, then I destroyed my career for nothing. Caused harm instead of helping. Became the villain instead of the hero. Can't accept that. Won't accept that. I was right. I am right. The world just isn't ready to admit it. Someday, people will see that what I tried to do was necessary. That those parents overreacted. That man who came after me just couldn't handle his daughter learning to think for herself. He had to control everything, had to be right. Typical male behavior. Using systems of power to crush woman trying to make difference. That's the real story. But no one wants to hear it. They want simple narrative where I'm cautionary tale. Where reasonable parents protected kids from extremist teacher. That's not what happened. I know what happened. I was there. I saw those kids learning and growing. I saw them starting to understand systems of oppression, The fact that it made them uncomfortable just proves it was working. I'm still looking for teaching jobs sometimes. Applications go nowhere. One Google search brings up all the articles. I'm unemployable in education now, all because I cared too much, tried too hard, refused to perpetuate oppressive systems. This is what happens to teachers who actually try to change things. We get crushed by parents who want their kids to stay ignorant, by administrators who care more about politics than justice, by legal systems that protect privilege. But I'm not sorry, won't apologize. Won't say I was wrong, because I wasn't. And someday, everyone will know it.